Richard Crouse.
I was going to ask you about that because, I mean, clearly this was a man who's gone through an enormous amount of therapy, but he seems to have a self-reflection that I certainly wouldn't have expected from him when he says things like, I can be high and I can be low, but I can't exist in the middle.
That's right.
I have lots of love to give, but I can't accept love.
Right.
He says all these things in the movie, and I thought to myself, I do not expect this from him.
No, and I have to say the degree to which it's there surprised me.
Yeah.
I knew it was there, but the fact that it was laid out so quickly, and these are not things he'd said before. You don't feel this is something that
Right.
he just says. It comes from having an obsessively self-analytical and analytical mind. It's going all the time. You're often in a room with him, 3 or 4 other people, he doesn't say a word, and then he'll say one sentence, and you realize that he's been 2 steps ahead of everybody the whole time.
Well, do you think it's because, you know, he was a boxer, he made his living beating the hell out of people? I mean, I remember paying $25 to go to a pay-per-view event, turning around to order a drink, and when I turned back, the fight was over.
Right.
I paid $25 and I missed the whole thing,
Yeah.
right? So you see him as a beast, right? You see him as this kind of animalistic guy who would bite and chew and punch people. And I didn't expect him to have this other sort of more self-reflective side.
Well, it's because normally they don't go together, at least we think they don't go together. One of the other fascinating things about him is that he destroys not just the stereotypes about him, he destroys typical thinking.
Right.
Because he is so unusual a mixture of selves. And, you know, there's a great phrase Andre Gide has, don't understand me too quickly.
Right,
and
right,
Tyson is a kind of emblem of that.
Well, it's interesting because I don't know why I was so surprised, because when you see him box and you see the discipline that he had to learn, you know, the whole, to watch the tapes and over and over and over and over again, and the obvious affection that he has for Mr. D'Amato, there's an analytical mind in there. You don't get to be a genius at boxing without having something happening cognitively.
Absolutely, no question about it. And when he applied it all towards being a champion and winning, he was indomitable. When it became a kind of complicated, almost self-subversive consciousness, it might even have aided in his decline.
Right, right. Now, it's been mentioned, well, the film, for people who haven't seen it yet, is told entirely in his words. There's no voiceover, there's some boxing footage spaced here and there, but it's not a typical documentary in that sense. Do you think there's a lack of objectivity, or was that not something
It was not intended to be. It was intended to be Tyson in his own vision of himself, in the same way that if you say, if you look at a self-portrait by Gauguin, Van Gogh, Rembrandt, is that an objective portrait of Gauguin? No,
right.
It's Gauguin's notion of Gauguin's notion of Gauguin. And you can say, well, I could take a photograph of him, and that would actually be a more accurate view. Well, perhaps, but that isn't what it is. This isn't intended to be, metaphorically speaking, a photograph. It's a self-portrait filtered through my own aesthetic, because what I have is my own way of presenting it. But essentially, I present it just from his point of view.
I know there were no ground rules when you went in. You said whatever topic I want to bring up is
Right.
fair game. Were there things though that you had to leave out, not particularly for time, for sake of telling the story?
I didn't actually show him the movie till it was done.
Right.
And I just used whatever I wanted to use, and there was no hesitation about any of it.
Right.
The only thing, there was some footage and some photographs that Monica, his ex-wife, had,
Right.
which when she saw the movie she gave me. I think if she hadn't liked it, she wouldn't have given it to me.
Right.
So I have that great clip of Tyson being knocked out by
Yeah.
his 3-year-old daughter,
Playing with
which
his daughter, which is lovely,
which I
yeah.
love, and that was given to me because she liked what she saw.
In terms of that sort of thing, with getting that sort of footage, because that footage is quite dynamic. It's really
Right,
something.
yeah.
Did your perception of Tyson change? Because, I mean, friends talk, but friends don't talk, I think, on the level that you had to talk
I
to.
have to say, seeing that particular home movie stuff, which clearly was not geared to show to anybody else or to impress anybody, it did show me a side of him that I had not seen.
Yeah.
I had not seen him as a father in that way. to have the heavyweight champion of the world shadow boxing with his 3-year-old daughter and then feigning being knocked out by her as he's counted out, and clapping and applauding her for knocking him out would not have been in my vision of Mike Tyson.
Yeah. Now has he changed over the 20 years? I mean, obviously he has, but what are, in your perception, what are the changes that you've seen in the last 20 years of friendship?
Just more darker, deeper, more complex, more fatalistic, and aware of life as a kind of tragic and painful, surreal experience, rather than at the beginning an open-ended, terrific opportunity to have fun.
Well, I was surprised when he made this movie. He was 40 years old. That was maybe the biggest surprise for me of all. I had no idea that he was 40. I thought he was 50. I thought he was older than that because he is so much in our kind. Like,
well,
he's just been around forever.
He feels old, and he said, "I feel like an old man," and of course he says, "I can't believe I'm alive at 40," and he uses 40 the way most people would use 80.
Yeah.
And of course, in that culture, that's not unexpected. He actually says, "Everybody I grew up with is either dead or in jail, or as he puts it, strung out on drugs somewhere in Brooklyn or Manhattan, as opposed to the Bronx, Staten Island, and Queens, where they're not strung out."
Well, it was interesting because you say in that culture, meaning the culture that he grew up in, but also the culture that he worked in, the milieu that he worked in his entire career. Boxers, typically, I mean, they do live, I guess, past 40, but they're often, hollow shells of themselves.
Absolutely, and when they die at an age where you think it's actually a young age. They just seem much older.
Yeah.
Sugar Ray Robinson died of Alzheimer's in his mid-60s. Joe Louis died in his mid-60s. He seemed like 85. Even the ones who were relatively healthy die young. I mean, Dempsey died in his 70s. It's not a sport that breeds longevity in terms of the brutality that you face. I mean, getting your head bashed in for 15 years is not a recipe for longevity.
One last quick question. Is Mike Tyson probably the last great heavyweight champion of the world? I mean, it seems like since him, I don't even know their names anymore.
I think I would only eliminate the word probably. I think definitely the sport has seen its greatest days. It's in its twilight, and Mike Tyson was the last great champion.
Mr. Toback, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Nice to see you again.
Thank you.
Richard Crouse.